Coastal erosion on our shorelines throughout this past hurricane season has exposed a piece of history on the Outer Banks. Parts of naval facility Cape Hatteras have been carved out from the sand on Buxton Beach. Meteorologist Steve Fundero joins us now with more.
Ian has a unique tie to some history back to the 50s and 60s. So the busy hurricane season we've had so far has featured nearly 20 storms. And while many of them have passed us by, they still found a way to alter our coastline. Every year, storm systems across the Atlantic produce more than the destructive landfalls and major news headlines.
We are now seeing the eye of the storm.
They create waves.
There's a lot of swell anxiety and trying to line everything up, but when you find the right spot, it's amazing.
From thousands of miles offshore or right along the coastline, storm systems have the power to shift the sands of our beaches. And nowhere is that more present than on the Outer Banks.
You'll never get bored surfing here. Other places, the angle and the period and the size that makes certain waves do certain things. And here it's just like every single swell surprises me.
Most of the time, a storm's energy is transferred through the waves of the Atlantic in a destructive way.
A second house has collapsed.
Pieces of the home are scattered.
But back in August and September, the coastal erosion from storms like Idalia and Ophelia uncovered a piece of history on Cape Hatteras National Seashore.
Are the foundations of some of the sound surveillance buildings and structures that were used by the Navy.
From 1956 to 1982, parts of Naval Facility Cape Hatteras were used to monitor offshore submarine activity.
They had a sound surveillance system here where there was a cable that went out into the Atlantic Ocean.
Before being declassified in 1991, this technology was operated with top secrecy during the Korean War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Vietnam and Cold Wars. In fact, in the early 60s, the first Soviet submarine was detected from the shoreline of Cape Hatteras.
Life on a barrier island is quite unique because it's extremely dynamic. One of the reasons people love to come to Cape Hatteras National Seashore is because it's always changing.
Storm after storm, wave after wave, the Outer Banks holds a special connection with the powers of the sea.
Surfing is the Outer Banks. It's a big part of why a lot of us live here. It's like your equilibrium, being in the water.
Now, back in September, residents and beachgoers along Buxton Beach noticed a strong scent of petroleum. Pieces of the naval station contaminated the soil and groundwater nearby. So I reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers, and the fix may seem simple. Just go out there and remove it from the sand. But they say the problem could worsen if they just go out there and dig. So they claim more testing will need to be done to determine the next steps for remediation. Steve Fundero, 10 on your side.